It is the big budget day. It is going to be released in just a moment. There is going to be a big announcement that is going to be made by Nirmala Sitharaman, our finance minister. But what are we looking at? Particularly, what is it that is going to be aimed at the middle class, at the Aam Aadmi, the common man? Are there going to be reductions? Are there going to be shuffling of the tax slab? Something that was also done last year around. This is a question mark when it comes to the government's initiative in wake of the elections. Is this going to be a populist budget? Are there going to be some action plans that are going to be implemented, funds and resources that are going to be announced for structural reforms? Well, it's all going to be unveiled in just a few hours from now. Joining me on the telecast right now is Gautam Mukherjee. And Gautam, a quick response from you about what is it that you expect, that you anticipate from the Ministry of Finance today in the budget, keeping in mind that the elections are on the anvil?
Yes, I do believe that some of the taxation aimed at the middle class will be tweaked. This is because the government is in a confident phase that they expect to come back for a third term. And this is also, of course, going to be pleasing to the middle class voter. The second part is I expect an increase in capex of about 20% on top of the 35% increase in the current fiscal. And this will indicate and signal that the growth in infrastructure will continue, therefore underpinning the economy.
Yeah.
Such. There will be a lot of emphasis, I think, on Nari Shakti. Part of this will be, excuse me, part of this will be fueled by incentives to women, and part of it will be in terms of new projects that encourage women to join the workforce.
Okay, all right. That's the gist of it. Fair enough. That's the gist of it. I'm going to quickly take in specifics. Joining me also on the telecast right now is Dr. Sujit Paul. He is the Group CEO of Zota Healthcare Limited. Now, Dr. Paul, the last budget that was announced by the Finance Ministry, there was a significant chunk that had been allocated to healthcare in India that was targeting the poor section, that was targeting the lower middle class. We talk about Ayushman Bharat, we talk about how there were these Ayushman cards that had been distributed. A significant chunk, like I said, that had been allocated to this scheme launched by the Government of India. Can there be an increase that can be anticipated this time around?
Thank you so much for that. I think two critical things that we anticipate would definitely come out of this budget. One would be enhanced increase in Ayushman Bharat and more allocation on healthcare budgets in terms of the revenue allocations that would go through. Definitely this year we would see more allocations coming in, which would penetrate India into much more rural, healthy India. That's what would happen this year, what we forecast and foresee. The other thing that would also happen in healthcare is that a strong boost will come in terms of manufacturing in India for the healthcare medicines and products that would further give enhancement to the push that the government is doing towards generic medicines, because generic medicines is the way forward for India. Good quality generic medicines are what it should be, and that's what the government is working on very strongly, and that's what it should actually happen, and that's definitely what would come out.
Okay.
Apart from that, one last point, what would happen is that there will be a huge index advantage that salaried people will get that will overall help in a much stronger healthcare ecosystem that would come ahead.
Okay. Mr. Rajesh Agarwal, Managing Director of Insecticides Limited. Mr. Agarwal, an overall picture and how Gautam was talking about a possibility that the capex, the capital expenditure this time around could be increased to about 35%. Last time around it was 45 lakh crore rupees. That was then allocated to various departments, various ministries, various schemes and yojanas. Now, there has been a steady increase in the GST collections by the government of India. There has been a steady increase in the revenue. So, is there a possibility that there might just be an income tax slab reshuffle, a reduction, if we can see exemptions being given, keeping in mind there will be less and less dependence of the government on the tax collection?
Yes, your question is very valid actually. So we do hope that there is relaxation in the corporate tax, but in India it's a double tax regime. Once you are taxed at the corporate level, then at the personal level there are huge taxes today that extends to 40% plus also levels. So definitely we hope that there should be some relaxation, because the number of people who are under this taxation regime are very, very limited if we look at the total population of our country. And I do hope that some relaxation should be given so that more people fall into the tax bracket, and the people who are already paying huge taxes, they should be given some relaxation.
Okay, fair enough. I'm going to quickly get in Mitali Nikore as well. Mitali, talking about the one grouse that the middle class had was about the tax slabs, the two tax slabs that had been created. It was optional. It was on the decision of the people to pick which one that they would like to follow. They had also spoken about disincentivization. There was disincentivization when it came to pushing people to make more savings. This was also an attempt by the RBI that continued to increase the basis points at which you could take interest. Now this is a measure taken by the government of India to reduce inflation, but it has also then pushed the middle class to save less and less.
So I think, Megha, what is happening is that with these two tax regimes, why was it that, for example, the option was given? Either you could have said, okay, you have to move to this new regime. The reason the option was given is because there are many people who have been following this, old regime for a very long time, and it's very difficult for them to shift. However, on the other side, the new taxpayers, when I look at actually the Gen Z, the generation that's just coming into the workforce and they've just started sort of drawing a lower salary, but they are coming in now, they are opting for this new regime because, in many cases, the deductions that were there in the old regime don't apply in the new regime, and in fact they are not even there in their new salary structures. So I think it will take a little bit of time, maybe a 5-year period, for the impact of this shift to play out. And I'm not seeing evidence of reductions in savings because of the new regime. NPS is still a part of the new regime. You can still go and save in the national pension scheme, and there is a certain amount of deduction that is still possible even in the new regime with NPS. But yes, the number of instruments are now kind of democratized. Earlier it was that, you have to save in NPS and PPF, and there are certain 4-5 designated instruments. Now you can save in any sort of private sector insurance. NPS is only one option. So that gives people a more level playing field even in the private sector to choose their saving and insurance instruments.
Okay.
It's not actually dictated by the government. So that helps in building a private sector infrastructure around it.
Okay.
So I would say give it 4 or 5 years and we can see the positive impacts of it as well.
I have with me Suyash Gupta, Director General, Indian Auto LPG Coalition. Mr. Gupta, when we are taking a look at the budget, and let's take a look at the brass tacks. Today, when my audience and I and all of you that are sitting over here will be appreciating all the structural reforms that the government is going to put out, and that is likely to be the focus area, keeping in mind the elections are going to take place. But what does the middle class person Aam Aadmi want? He wants a reduction in fuel prices. We also take a look at the reduction in income tax. We talk about gold import duty. We talk about prices to bring about a change, whether they are rising or whether they are reducing for mobile phones. And this is what the Aam Aadmi, this is what the person who's watching our telecast is thinking about, is expecting, is anticipating. So can there be changes, reductions expected in all these areas that I've just spoken about?
I'd like to answer this in two ways. Personally, I would expect, and what I expect is it's going to be less of structural reforms, and it's going to be more money in the pockets of the rural populace, and also the rural and BPL population. They're going to ride heavily on the JAM Trinity, and you rightly touched on the fuel price reduction. With the crude both Brent and WTI crude having been in a zone which has been a bit comfortable for the government, they would be an election declaration may be just a couple of weeks away, and after the code of conduct comes in, they may not be able to really announce that reduction in fuel pricing. So it is possible that there is a reset on the excise element, and the fuel prices are reduced, and that would also have an impact on the inflation, and more money in the pockets of the complete citizenry of the country. And additionally, maybe additional grants, as Mitali mentioned, through Nari Shakti, and maybe more money in the hands of the female populace and the voters of the country. So this is what I do expect will happen in the budget. But as an expectation, talking from the fuel angle, when I started the discussion, I'd like to see a wider reach out of the finance ministry to also incentivize the other cleaner fuel options. Today, for us, the cleaner fuel options are limited to electric, and we aren't really cleaning up the country completely, because we will be polluting power plants more, with 66% of electricity still sourced from fossils. I'd like to see more incentivization at the consumer end, maybe to natural gas vehicles, to LPG vehicles, to ethanol. Hydrogen is still a while away, and the government is doing whatever it can through incentivization of hydrogen, using it through other media, and maybe better use of the coal bed methane.
Yes.
So energy security, maybe I would want to see more incentivization and reach out, maybe incentivize the OEMs to produce cleaner fuel vehicles. Right now, it cannot just be electric.
Okay.
The whole narrative needs to be a bit larger.
Yeah, absolutely. We were talking about India's energy independence yesterday on the eve of the budget. We touched upon the subjects of solar power, wind energy, ethanol, green hydrogen being the focal points of the government, particularly solar energy, particularly hydrogen mission, where lakhs of crores have already been funneled into. I'm going to quickly get in. I have with me Pankaj Agarwal as well. He's the Chief Operating Officer, Bikaner Wala Foods. Now, Pankaj, taking a look at the overall picture, now there has been a finance ministry review that has been released 3 days ago ahead of the budget, where it talks about India reaching the 7% GDP growth rate is a possibility, and a very near possibility. That has been the appropriation, that has been the forecast that has been made by the finance ministry for this year 2024-2025. There's also talks about India reaching the $7 trillion economy mark by 2030. Now, in a bid to achieve all these big ambitious goals, which are the key sectors that have to be worked upon by the government? Is this going to be reflected in the finance ministry's budget as well?
I think the biggest sector for reform is the agriculture and FMCG from food point of view, perspective from view, because it's the election year and government has to please all the farmers also, industrialists also, and the middlemen also. From tax regime, and the industry will come on control of commodity prices and the cost of conversion. In terms of energy, government is supporting a lot by allowing open access in UP and the other area, which is reducing the cost of power also. And the same with the biomass fuel they have allowed. They have allowed PNG, they have allowed other sources of fuel, which is also reducing the cost. So this all will help in maintaining the good economy, good growth of industry, good growth of middle class and agriculture. Technology is helping for agriculture growth, yield growth, and this is what I predict. And the
Okay.
tax
Okay.
and the some relaxation in tax regime for middle class people.
Okay, gotten the same question to you, and particularly if we take a look at the specifics from the last year budget announced in February, and talking about the maximum chunk of the funds were allocated to infrastructure, to road development in the Sagar Mela scheme that has been launched, the initiative. There was then this the scheme that came in second in rang was the Awas Yojana. Then we had the Jal Yojana we spoke about. There was in fact a large percentage of the chunk that went to defense as well. We talked about we talk about women-centric schemes. We talk about toilets. We spoke about Jan Dhan. We talked about also a large percentage of some thousands of crores that had been allocated for Prime Minister's Anna Yojana. And there was also an interesting aspect, particularly for the 2019 budget that had been announced. That was also an election year. And while there is a larger sentiment that there are no big schemes, no new schemes that are announced by the government during the vote of account, the interim budget, something different was done out of the ordinary. That was done by the Finance Ministry, where the PM Kisan Samman Yojana had been launched. That was a new policy, that was a new scheme, a new Yojana that had been launched, and there was thousands of crores once again that was funneled by the government into the scheme, targeting directly the Kisan, the farmers of our country. Do you think there could be some such sort of a new scheme, new Yojana targeting a particular segment? Who could be this particular segment?
I think this year the government should also address unemployment. And definitely this will come from the industrial growth or other sector growth, because this is all the opposition parties are raising big issue on unemployment. Though government is passing all kind of subsidy and growth, but still unemployment is the area where I don't think government has too much work there. Still, there's a lot of scope is there. And second thing is the Nari Shakti, and third is again is the farmer and industrialist.
Okay, the same question to you, Mitali. Taking a look at the interim budget, are there going to be populist measures and particularly new policy changes, new schemes that are going to be announced? This is going to be away from the normal when interim budgets are announced traditionally.
Absolutely, Megha. But I actually beg to differ a little bit. I don't think we will see that many new schemes being announced today. What I expect today is that for a lot of the flagship schemes, that have been the face of this government for the last 5 years, we will actually start to see some data, and we will actually start to see some outcomes and impact being cited in the budget speech. So, for example, for women-led development, if we have Ujjwala Yojana or we have PM Awas Yojana or we have, Yojanas at the Jan Dhan schemes, how have those benefited women? I do expect that to be articulated and, the budget allocations for those schemes to definitely increase.
Yeah.
Secondly,
keeping in mind, this was in fact the crux of the speech that had been made by the president in the parliament yesterday. She spoke, but in figures. She spoke about how much of funds have been allocated by the government in all these schemes and all these departments and ministries. And she also particularly mentioned about the beneficiaries, which are these people, how many people have been touched, and which clearly states the focus of the government. This is an election year. Let's not joke about it. Let's not have two ways about it. That focus area will be the people, where the voter base, and it's clearly visible when the president of the country also reiterates the fact.
Exactly. Exactly, Megha. And this is what we'll see in other areas also. One is, of course, Nari Shakti, which will definitely be the prime focus, one of the prime focus. But apart from that, in social protection, when we look at improved health outcomes, when we look at improved learning outcomes and educational enrollment, when we look at improve in water connections, the Jal Jeevan mission is also a big win for this government. The Awas Yojana, where so many affordable housing has been created, such a big movement, the Awas Yojana in a way. These are very huge flagship schemes. Even the Swachh Bharat Yojana, every year it does find a mention. And this year again, with Nari Shakti being the theme, bringing in the toilet construction, linking in with women's health outcomes and with sanitation, improved sanitation. But other than that, on infrastructure as well, looking at the roadways that have been constructed, looking at the national logistics policy and how that's bringing down logistics cost. Rishabh was discussing this in the previous segment, that the logistics cost is also a big, challenge for us today. Looking at how border roads have been made, how land ports have been made, these are all very big achievements from an infrastructure point of view. And definitely we'll start to see, the government talking about that and looking at the budget that
Yeah.
is being allocated to these sectors.
Yeah, fair enough. And when we talk about the division of allocation, infrastructure, and particularly roads and highways, has been the big focal point in the previous budget as well. Monica Malhotra, she's the managing director of MBD Group. Monica, when we speak about hospitality, and especially with this segment, with this sector bearing the brunt during the COVID time from 2020 up until 2022, there was a resurrection, but the resurrection has been slow. There had been a lot of demands from the hospitality sector for the government to push forth for further development, providing incentives, providing subsidies for this sector. So here on, when we are in 2024, we have a robust economy. How do you think? Do you think there is going to be the focal area also on hospitality, keeping in mind there is religious tourism that is on the minds of the government? The Ram Mandir Ayodhya that has been inaugurated, consecrated. We talk about Mathura, we talk about Kashi, we talk about these religious circuits that have been already created. Will this have a positive impact on hospitality, and can this find a mention in the budget this time?
Well, you're right that there has been a downward trend during Corona, especially in hospitality, and post-Corona, I've seen that the consumer has come back with a vengeance in terms of they have understood the importance of the work-life balance. They are spending, as the previous speakers also said, that when you go to the markets, you see people are spending, the consumer is spending, and so likewise they're spending in hospitality. And we've seen a definitive boom from the perspective of where we were in Corona, that we are seeing that consumers are very actively using the products in hospitality. Of course, there are some age-old issues which now more so has to be tackled in terms of the interest rates and how we're getting loans. That has to be looked at now more so, because the tourism towards India is increasing with the initiatives which have been taken by government, and regional tourism and education tourism also increasing within the country. I think a lot more emphasis has to be laid in terms of getting how do we get loans. So the infrastructure becomes very I think a lot of capital goes into the infrastructure development of a particular hotel. So that is a main point when you are doing a hotel, when your break-even is coming.
Yeah.
So the input is quite the interest heavy. So that has to be looked at.
Yeah, Monica,
so
it's interesting because just a few weeks ago, Prime Minister Narendra Modi was in Lakshadweep, and that is tourism that has been promoted at the highest level. Publicity that has been garnered by Lakshadweep has been second to none. So there is an overall impetus, the message being brought in by the government, incentivizing local tourism, domestic tourism, vis-a-vis travelers looking to go abroad to Europe or to Southeast Asia or to North America for their holidays. So again, a mention over here, when the government, when the Prime Minister himself goes to areas, goes to regions, goes to union territories and states where tourism can be harnessed to the largest, to the highest level, can there be an indication that this sector is in fact going to be at the front and center of the government reform structural announcements this year?
Well, the sentiment definitely is positive because of the initiative, the way government is laying emphasis on this, and the way Prime Minister himself is laying emphasis on this. As I said, for the education also, because the sentiment has been very positive in the last fiscal year also, and so, but now this year we're looking at hospitality, that you should look at definitely the interest rates. They should look at the GST, uniform GST in all the states, and the reduction of GST also.
Okay.
So all these things put together, infrastructure is improving, and with more hotels coming in, I think it will really support the tourism to a large extent. And India is really looking up. If you look at vis-a-vis the entire world, India is rising and shining. So
Okay,
in
okay,
terms
all
of many
right.
sectors,
Fair
including
enough.
hospitals,
We have a couple of hours to go when the budget is going to be announced. It's going to be a couple of hours affair where the finance minister is going to address both the houses of the parliament.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.